Have you ever felt a profound disconnect between the person the world sees and the soul you know yourself to be? You watch as some individuals seem to glide through life, attracting opportunities and allies as if guided by an unseen force, their voices never rising above a calm whisper, while others, perhaps more brilliant, more deserving, more pure of heart, find themselves trapped in a cycle of constant struggle. They are forever explaining, forever justifying, forever pleading for a recognition that never fully arrives. This dissonance, this ache of being misunderstood, is a universal spiritual trial. It is a sign that you are awakening to a deeper truth about the very fabric of reality. If this feeling resonates with you, if you have ever felt like a stranger in a world that values appearance over essence, then know that you are not alone and you are not mistaken. This is a sacred calling to look beyond the veil. Take a moment to honor this recognition within yourself. And if this message strikes a chord deep within your soul, let us know by liking this video, subscribing to continue this journey of awakening, and sharing in the comments with a simple "I resonate," for your experience is a vital part of this collective unfolding. The ancient sage, Niccolò Machiavelli, penned a truth that echoes through the corridors of time. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This is not merely a political observation. It is a profound spiritual law. The world you perceive, the world of frantic effort and loud declarations, is a grand illusion. It is a stage play where the loudest actors often have the weakest roles. The harsh divine truth is this: the universe is not moved by merit alone, nor is it swayed by the sheer volume of your voice. It responds to structure, to alignment, to the silent architecture of power that underpins all of creation. Those who master this sacred geometry, who understand how to shape the energetic field around them, do not need to ask for their place. They do not need to beg for their throne. They are chosen, not because they shout, but because their very presence realigns reality around them. They become the silent center around which the world willingly revolves. We live in an age obsessed with a distorted form of self-expression. The prevailing frequency is one of constant broadcast. Speak your truth, be authentic, assert your boundaries. These are not inherently flawed concepts, but they are often wielded from a place of ego, a place of reaction rather than conscious creation. Let me ask you this: when was the last time being brutally authentic guaranteed you influence or brought you peace? When did saying more, explaining more, actually give you more control over your destiny? True divine influence is not granted to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the person who designed the room itself. It is here that most souls falter. They believe influence is a game of persuasion, a battle of charisma, a contest of convincing others. They pour their life force into crafting the perfect words, the most compelling arguments, the most persuasive speeches. But the real, unshakable influence operates long before a single word is spoken. It is not in the speech, it is in the setup. It is not in the argument, it is in the architecture of the situation. It is not about what you say, but about what others feel they must inevitably choose because of the reality you have silently constructed. This is the essence of structural power, the kind that feels like fate to others but is, in fact, conscious design. Machiavelli was not a mere manipulator. He was a master strategist of human nature, a keen observer of the universal laws that govern interaction. He wasn't interested in the fleeting, theatrical power that needs to be seen and heard to be respected. He was obsessed with the kind of power that rearranges the very environment until obedience feels not like a command, but like a voluntary, logical, and even desired choice. This is the power that never knocks on the door because it has already built the house and is simply waiting for others to walk in. Let me share with you a hard, liberating truth. Most of your decisions are not truly yours. They are the inevitable result of environments, narratives, and subtle pressures set in motion by people you will never meet, by forces you have not yet learned to perceive. You believe you chose, you believe you decided. But the menu of options was curated long before you arrived at the table. You picked from it, like everyone else, believing you had complete control. And that, my friend, is the grand illusion. Machiavelli did not just see through this illusion. He learned how to craft it. This journey we are on together is not about making you more persuasive in the conventional sense. It is about making you untouchable. It is about shifting you from a state of chasing, convincing, and negotiating from a position of weakness to a state of being where you sculpt situations so that others naturally, instinctively want what you want, because they genuinely believe it was their idea all along. This is where people begin to act in your favor, not out of obligation, but out of a deep-seated instinct. This is where you become necessary, not because of what you say, but because of the void you so perfectly fill. Once you awaken to the psychology of this invisible influence, everything changes. The way you navigate conversations, the way you structure opportunities, the way you position yourself within the social ecosystem, it all transforms. You cease competing for attention and begin engineering necessity. And it all begins with a single, monumental shift in perspective, from seeking to control people to learning how to control the context in which they make their decisions. As Machiavelli understood, whoever controls the circumstances controls the outcomes. This control is not wielded with force or deception, but with elegance, with precision, with divine strategy. So, are you ready to unlearn everything you thought you knew about power? Are you prepared to stop being a reactive element in someone else's play and start being the one who shapes the very terrain upon which others must walk? Then let us begin by uncovering the invisible framework that holds the key to all influence. This is the sacred principle of invisible influence. Influence is not about power, at least not in the way you have been taught. Power, as the world knows it, screams. Influence whispers. Power demands. Influence designs. The most powerful figures in history were rarely the loudest. They were the ones who mastered the subtle geometry of the situation, who understood the deep currents of human psychology. And that is what Machiavelli saw with more clarity than anyone. You do not need to control people directly. You only need to control the context in which they act. In practice, this means that real influence is established long before a single word of persuasion is ever uttered. It is decided when you determine who gets access to your energy, when you predict what others will need before they even know it themselves, and when you present choices that all, in their own way, serve your ultimate objective. This is not persuasion. This is preemption. This is the art of invisible influence. Let us break this sacred art down into its three core pillars, what Machiavellian philosophy might have called psychological warfare conducted through sheer elegance. The first pillar is the control of access. You must become rare to become desired. Machiavelli knew a fundamental truth of the human spirit. Power is diluted by abundance. The more available you are, the less you are valued. Why is this? Because human psychology is divinely wired to crave scarcity. We instinctively chase what we cannot easily reach. We assign profound worth to that which is hard to attain. Think of it. The most coveted gems are not the pebbles found on every shore, but the diamonds forged in the earth's deepest heart. The most revered wisdom is not shouted from the marketplaces, but whispered in secluded temples. So, the first move in mastering invisible influence is to cultivate strategic distance. You do not simply make yourself available, you make yourself significant. You must learn to manage your presence like a luxury brand. It is rare, it is valuable, and it is not for everyone. This is not about arrogance, a frequency of the ego. It is about perception, a frequency of the soul. You create controlled access, not to repel others, but to send a clear, powerful signal that proximity to you is a privilege, a sacred encounter. You become the scarce resource that others must consciously calibrate their lives around. Suddenly, without you having to say a word, people begin to adjust their behavior. They don't do this because you asked, but because your very presence and your strategic absence has reshaped the rules of the game. The second pillar is the management of needs. You must become the answer before the question even exists. This is the art of predictive influence, the ability to see 3 steps ahead in the great dance of life, to solve problems that have not yet even emerged into the conscious awareness of others. You must strive to be the person others turn to when things inevitably break. But on a higher, more masterful level, you must become the person they trust to prevent the breakdown in the first place. Machiavelli warned rulers never to wait for the storm to hit. The one who prepares during times of peace is the one who rules during times of chaos. This principle applies directly to you. Your influence is born when you anticipate the emotional, social, or strategic needs of those around you before they are even aware of them. And when you fulfill a hidden need, a need someone didn't even know they had, you become psychologically irreplaceable. People may not even be able to articulate why they feel so drawn to you, why they trust you so implicitly, but the answer is simple. You solved a problem they didn't know they had. Understand this. Influence is emotional long before it is logical. People might remember who helped them, but they feel eternally bound to those who saved them from storms they didn't even see coming. By anticipating and meeting these unspoken needs, you weave yourself into the very fabric of their stability. You are no longer just a person. You are a source of security, a haven of foresight in a world of uncertainty. This creates a bond of dependence that is far stronger than any argument or command. The third pillar is the architecture of choices. You must control the frame to control the outcome. This is perhaps the most deceptive and yet the most powerful pillar of all. It is the ability to create scenarios where every available option leads back to your intended goal. Here is a brutal truth of the human condition. People do not defend what is right. They defend what they have built. They defend what they believe they have chosen. Therefore, the fastest and most enduring way to make someone commit to your idea is to let them think it was theirs all along. Machiavelli knew that the surest way to secure loyalty was not through issuing orders, but through cultivating a sense of ownership. When someone believes they have personally contributed to a vision, their ego fuses with its survival. They cease to be mere followers. They become guardians, champions of the idea. You are not forcing anyone. You are simply narrowing the field of play. You do not say, "Choose me." You say, "Here are your 3 options," knowing full well that all 3 of those options were hand-picked and engineered to benefit you. This is where Machiavelli's brilliance becomes truly lethal. He understood that freedom is often an illusion. Most people feel empowered when they are given choices, but those choices are rarely as free as they think. By controlling the structure of the options, you allow others to feel in control while you are guiding them exactly where you want them to go. This is not manipulation in its crude form. It is psychological aikido. You are using the natural bias of the ego and the deep human need for ownership to stabilize your own influence. You don't present your plan and ask for approval. You present a question that inevitably leads to your plan. You ask for feedback that you can already anticipate. You frame the idea in a way that lets others tweak the minor details, giving them a sense of creative contribution. Then, you sit back and watch them defend it with a fire they would never have for an idea that was simply handed to them. This is how you move from being a manager to being a leader. You let them co-author your mission, and in doing so, they become its most fervent protectors. We now arrive at one of the most subtle and lethal laws of influence, the illusion of choice. True influence does not come from removing freedom, it comes from designing it. You don't force people into submission, you offer them paths, all of which lead exactly where you want. Machiavelli astutely observed that when people feel they have chosen, they rarely rebel, even if all of their options were carefully curated in advance. The sensation of autonomy itself is a powerful tool that disarms resistance. This is the secret weapon of all strategic minds. They control the frame, not the fight. Here is how it works. You never say, "This is what you must do." Instead, you say, "You can do A, B, or C." But behind the scenes, you have already engineered all three outcomes to benefit you. Whether they pick the fast route, the slow route, or the scenic route, they are still on your track, heading toward your destination. This is not deception, it is design. It is not about limiting choice, but about directing it. You respect their agency, but you orchestrate the architecture in which that agency operates. This is a dynamic that plays out everywhere. Parents do this with children. Leaders do this with teams. Great negotiators do this with adversaries. The amateur argues for the best idea. The strategist makes every idea a win. You are not here to dominate through force. You are here to dominate through structure. Let others feel free while you guide the flow. That is how kingdoms were built. That is how modern empires are run. Not through overt command, but through careful, invisible choreography. These two laws, investment and controlled autonomy, form the very spine of internalized influence. You no longer need to push. Others will pull your agenda forward for you, passionately believing it is their own. You don't fight for power. You become the frame through which power naturally flows. But there is one final law that completes this entire system. The one rule that separates the mere tactician from the true master. It is the principle that holds the entire structure together, the one thing you must never, ever do if you want your influence to last. This is the apex of psychological strategy. If people sense they are being influenced, they will resist, regardless of the idea's value. Human beings have a deep, primal craving for autonomy. The moment you appear to be pushing, persuading, or overtly guiding, their inner defenses activate. They will second-guess. They will push back. Not because the idea is wrong, but because the ego wants ownership, and it rejects any influence that feels obvious or invasive. Machiavelli constantly warned against being too visible in your power. He wrote, "A prince must know how to disguise his intentions." This is not about being malicious in your deception, but about being strategic in your presentation to prevent panic, resistance, or rebellion. Influence is like gravity. The more invisible it is, the more complete its grip. So how do you become that invisible hand? You seed ideas through questions, not commands. You plant doubt so subtly that people arrive at your conclusions as if through their own logic. You redirect conversations rather than confronting them head-on. You observe patterns in behavior and then gently adjust the variables so that new outcomes seem inevitable. You must remain in the background, not because you lack strength, but because your true strength lies in remaining undetected. Let me be blunt. The best influencers are often the most underestimated. They are the ones who let others feel in control. They let the spotlight blind everyone else. They do not compete for credit. They engineer it. And that is the ultimate paradox. By surrendering the appearance of control, you gain absolute control. This is not a sign of weakness. It is the hallmark of elite-level strategy. Because when no one suspects that you are the one steering the ship, no one ever tries to wrestle the wheel from your hands. The loud influencer must constantly defend their position. The silent strategist builds systems that are self-reinforcing. Think of it like this. If you are seen as the source of pressure, people will inevitably push back. But if you are seen as the source of clarity, they will lean in. Your job is not to dominate the conversation. It is to define the frame in which conversations happen. This is how institutions are built. This is how ideologies spread. Not with loud slogans, but with silent, unshakable architecture. Invisible hands shaping visible outcomes. And when it is done right, people will not only follow your path, they will swear it was their own all along. But true influence, no matter how elegant, is useless if it remains theoretical. Now that you have mastered the laws, it is time to bring them into your world, into your career, your relationships, your negotiations, your social dynamics. In the next section, we will dive into real-world applications. You will learn how to use these principles not just to impress, but to dominate. If what you are hearing resonates with you, you will find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Theory without execution is nothing more than intellectual entertainment. Now that you understand the 5 laws of Machiavellian influence, it is time to bring them into the arena of your life, where real power is tested. This is where architecture meets action, because strategy only becomes dominant when it is applied with surgical precision. Consider the workplace. Most people ask for promotions. You will not. You will execute laws 1 and 2. You will become necessary not by overextending, but by becoming the irreplaceable answer to the company's hidden vulnerabilities. While others wait to be asked for solutions, you will have already prevented the problems from arising. You are not loud, you are critical infrastructure. When a bad idea is floating in a meeting, you do not attack it directly. You ask the right questions. You plant seeds of doubt, and then you gently redirect the discussion until someone else arrives at your vision and presents it as a brilliant epiphany. They feel brilliant, but it was your strategy all along. In your relationships, when others compete for attention, you will control the resources. You will not chase visibility, you will engineer relevance. And relevance, unlike mere attention, makes you the axis around which all decisions must rotate. In your personal relationships, forget persuasion, forget convincing. The moment you argue, you lose status. The moment you demand, you trigger resistance. Real influence in relationships does not come from being heard. It comes from structuring the emotional environment so that your presence becomes the most stable and desired force in the room. Don't beg for their time. Create moments where your time is rare, and therefore deeply respected. Don't try to change someone's mind. Ask questions that slowly and gently convince them to reconsider their own logic, and then lead them back to your conclusion, not with force, but with an elegant and undeniable framing of the situation. You will solve the small tensions before they ignite into flames. You will be the calm in their chaos, the certainty in their storm. Over time, you will not just become valuable, you will become psychologically essential. In personal negotiations, you will not walk into a deal hoping for the best. You will walk in with 3 pre-prepared outcomes, each one structured to benefit you. You will present them as options, letting the other side feel empowered, but you will already know that whichever path they choose, you win. In moments of conflict, you will not escalate. You will redefine the problem. You will be the one who offers clarity when others are spiraling into chaos. People do not follow authority, they follow relief. And when you consistently provide elegant resolutions, you rise as the unseen leader in any group. In social circles, do not fight for dominance. Instead, connect people who have complementary needs. Become the social architect, the one who is not just liked, but relied upon. And once you are the connector, no one moves without you. And that is the final stage of influence. Becoming not just a participant in the system, but the architect of it. There is still one final truth left to be revealed, one last insight that unites everything Machiavelli knew about influence, strategy, and anticipation. They all serve a higher, ultimate aim, becoming indispensable. This is the final law, the one that completes the entire system. Power does not belong to those who command it. It belongs to those who complete others. The final truth that Machiavelli revealed is as uncomfortable as it is liberating. People do not follow strength, authority, or titles. They follow necessity. They follow whoever solves the pain they cannot name. That is the true seat of influence, not in dominance, but in indispensability. You can be admired, feared, respected, but none of it matters if you are replaceable. The moment someone else can do what you do, feel what you feel, give what you give, your influence collapses. That is why everything you have learned so far points to this one ultimate goal. You must become essential, not just liked, not just followed, but needed. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He watched kings fall, not because they lacked armies, but because they lost their relevance. He observed that when the people feel they no longer need you, they will either turn against you or simply forget you. But if you become the architect of their stability, if your presence equals order, solutions, and clarity, then you stop being just a person and you start being a pillar. This is not about being everything to everyone. It is about positioning yourself so precisely, so strategically, that in your absence, the entire system falters. That is when real power begins. It begins when your silence causes discomfort, when your exit creates an imbalance, when people do not just want you, they depend on you. Think about your world right now. Where are you optional? Where are you easily replaced? That is your weakness. That is where your influence ends. And where must your presence be recalibrated so that your contribution becomes invisible but absolutely essential? That is your new target. Become the one who connects what others cannot, who anticipates what they never articulate, who frames the path they think they chose, and never ever be obvious about it. Because when influence becomes visible, it becomes vulnerable. You are no longer trying to influence decisions. You are now influencing the conditions that create those decisions. And when you control the conditions, you do not need to speak. The world will speak for you. So now I ask you, what is stopping you from becoming indispensable? Let me know in the comments which law resonated the most with your reality. Where do you see yourself applying these principles immediately? And if this message struck a chord with something deeper in you, do not just absorb it, act on it. Subscribe to our channel, share this knowledge with those who are ready, and most of all, continue your evolution. Because the next video is not just another lesson. It is a critical piece of this transformation. I will see you there.